I'm Owen Bigland. This is the Inside Edge video blog. As you guys know, long-term Vancouver real estate, I am incredibly bullish. Always have been. I've been in this market for over 30 years. So I know from experience that simply buying a quality downtown Vancouver condo or a townhouse out in Mount Pleasant or a condo out in Burnaby or Richmond, you need a roof over your head, buy it, live in it, enjoy it, keep it for 20 years, you are going to do incredible. But I've also said on my blog here, I think I'm one of the few bloggers out there that paint both sides of the picture. I've often said here, don't just go out and buy anything. Hire a realtor. If you want to buy a downtown Vancouver condo, or you want to buy an investment unit, you better get an experienced realtor that knows that market inside and out. Someone like me. But you know, there are always going to be I see it every day on the MLS, stuff that is absolute garbage that I would not touch with a 10-foot pole. That's the way the Vancouver real estate market has always been. You can't paint it with a broad brush. There are good units, there are okay units, and then there are dogs that no one should buy, but they still get bought. Who buys them? I don't know. Maybe they don't do their due diligence. Maybe they don't read the documents. I wouldn't touch them. You can get them at a good price, but I'm under the belief, who cares? Why not spend the extra 10 or 15%, buy a quality unit that will, A, be much easier to rent, keep good quality tenants. They're not complaining about the noise and everything else. You're not hit with a bunch of levies every year, and you're going to do far better off on the appreciation. The 10 or 15% more you spend, you'll make that up tenfold over the next 20 years on the appreciation that these good quality units do. But like I always over the years, I pointed out many of the things that, aren't good, that I wouldn't touch. And the MLS is full right now, especially. I've been blogging about this for a while, the lack of quality that's out there. Yeah, inventory is up, but I have not seen the quality, the amount of low volume for quality units in quite some time now. It's really a waiting game, and the good units are getting picked off very quick. What's left on the market right now is just languishing, and it's stuff that is a tough sell. You can sell these things when the market's hot. When the market gets more balanced like it is now, these things languish and they stay on the market. But there's always things here that I want to point out to people, some of the things that I have to shake my head at. So the first one I'll talk about here is selling a tenanted property. I've blogged so many times on this over the last 8 years probably. The biggest mistake I see sellers doing is trying to sell a unit with a tenant still in it. Now, sometimes it's the realtor. Sometimes the realtor just doesn't care. They're not really familiar with tenancy laws and what are some of the options that the seller would have to get a better price. Sometimes though, it's also the seller. The seller just doesn't care. The seller doesn't want to lose a month's rent or 2 months rent. They want the realtor to sell that condo with the tenant attached so they don't have to miss a month's rent. Well, they're being penny wise and pound foolish, of course. Sure, you're not going to miss a month's rent, but you're going to leave $20,000 or $30,000 in your final selling price. So as I blogged about, when someone calls me and they want to sell their condo and it's tenanted, I have a duty to explain to them the pros and cons of having that property, of me selling it tenanted. And I tell them that, by selling it tenanted, we're restricted in a number of ways. A, how the unit looks. Very seldom do I see a unit that's tenanted that shows beautifully. They're usually a mess. Some tenants take very good care of the unit, but for the most part, they're cluttered and dirty. You're also limited on the showing times with the tenant. You've got to work it out with the tenant on when you can show it. The second thing is that the buyer, if it's a principal residence buyer, they've got to, if it's a fixed term tenancy, well, they can't buy it. If it's on a month to month, then we still have to give that tenant 2 clear months. Plus, Mr. Seller is still going to have to pay the tenant 1 month's rent to get them out. If it's an investor buyer, for the most part, a lot of times investors do not want to assume your tenant. The big reason why they don't is usually these tenants have been in there for years and they're paying far below market rent. And the new investor buyer will not be able to raise that rent back up to market. So I've done so many blogs on this. Essentially, you are limiting your buyer pool a great deal. When you're limiting your buyer pool, you're going to limit how much you're going to get for that unit. So when I sit down with a seller that has a tenant, I will explain to them some of the options we have, fully legal options that actually are in the tenant's favor to get them out. The one I use the most often by far is a simple mutual agreement to end tenancy. You negotiate it with your tenant. You tell your tenant that, listen, I want to sell the unit. You're going to be out either way. What I'll do for you is if you can be out in 30 days or 40 days, sign the mutual agreement to end tenancy, and I will give you 2 months rent. I will give you a check for $5,000 or $4,500. It's a great deal for the tenant. The tenant knows he's going to be out anyways. Why not take the cash and go? Now the unit is empty. Once he's out, we can clean it up. It shows well. I don't have any restrictions on showing it. If a principal residence buyer wants to buy it to move in, we can close in 2 or 3 weeks, or we can close in a month and a half. If it's an investor, they can buy it, take possession, and put a tenant in at full market rent. So I see these all the time. I could go onto the MLS right now and pull 30 of these things. It's crazy. Here is one in a building that I know in Crosstown. Good building. As a matter of fact, I would buy this unit right now. It's been on the market here for 80 days. It's a good unit. I know the building. I will give them an offer right now. The problem is they are on a fixed term tenancy until March of next year. They keep renewing the tenancy, obviously, at $1,742 a month. Now, I can tell you that the market rent on this is $2,200 a month, $2,250. That's what they should be getting for this. But this tenant has obviously been in there for a while. And I don't know if the landlord's been raising the rent at all, or if he is, he can only raise it 2.5%, 4.5% last year. So I've got investor buyers who are always looking for these units, but A, he's on a fixed term tenancy anyways. My guy doesn't want to assume the tenant at $1,700 a month when the going rate is $2,200. So no wonder it's been on the market so long. You know, oftentimes, as I say, the seller does not know what the options are and what the anchor, it's like an anchor on this listing, having it tenanted occupied. Now, occasionally I will see a unit where maybe the tenant just renewed or the tenant's only been in there a little while and they're paying pretty close to market rent. I've sold some of those where they're paying $2,150 or $2,200. Okay, my buyer will take them on, assume the tenant, because they're paying very close to market rent. But again, you want to do your due diligence on that too. You want to see the tenancy agreement. You want to have a look at their credit score, because again, you're assuming this tenant. You don't know anything about them. So you want to do your due diligence on it. So selling a tenanted property, again, it's the biggest mistake that sellers make. And I could pull 30 of those right now that are that exact same thing. Locked in tenant, paying super low rent. The unit looks like crap. No wonder the thing's been languishing. And some of them are good units that if they didn't have a tenant attached to it on a fixed term tenancy, I would probably put an offer in on it. The other ones too, I see a ton of these too. I've talked about it, how lack of quality on the MLS. There's a lot of dogs out there. There's a lot of stuff that's way overpriced that I wouldn't touch. Here's an example of one here. And you know what? I'm going to give you the name of this one. This is this new building that's just coming up for completion here, hugging up on the Cambie Street Bridge, called the Arc. Now, a lot of people that bought this pre-sale have done very well on it. They got in at a good price 3 years ago, so good for you. You got in all right. But I see some stuff that's on the market right now. They're getting ready to get occupancy on these things. That is crazy. Here's one on the 10th floor, 490 square feet, with one parking spot, listed for $745 plus GST. This is an assignment, so you're buying this. You're buying this one directly from the developer who held some of these back. So you're talking now with PTT and with GST. Let's just call it an even $800,000. $800,000, 10th floor, hugging up on the Cambie Street Bridge for 490 square feet. Man, now it's shiny and new, but For that price, I could sell you a far superior unit in every way. Better finishings, way better location, 1 or 2 years old. It doesn't have to be old. It's going to be pretty much brand new. That would blow this away and be about 650 square feet. You know, this unit you might be able to get $2,100 a month for a small unit like this, $2,150 or so. But this stuff is out there, and I see these things being sold. So I like to paint both sides of the picture here. I'm bullish on Vancouver real estate, buying and holding. But again, don't buy just anything. And I see some of these being sold. Some of these are reported sold every single week on the MLS that I think to myself, man, you just did not do a lot of looking at some good tangible product. At $800,000 for 490 square feet, that is a tall price. As a matter of fact, I think I could get something better. Might be a waiting game because, as I said, there's not a whole lot of inventory and quality units. But for about $675, I think I could get a far superior unit, about 100 square feet bigger and better in every way. Location, finishing, building, you name it. So be careful out there. There's always some things that I think are worth buying and putting offers in on, but you got to wade through a lot of stuff. And the thing I want to point out here, I don't blame people for trying. You know, this is an open market system. You can price things whatever you want, and they'll probably end up reducing this. They'll probably give it another few more weeks, or maybe after Labor Day, drop this thing down to $699 or something. But you can't blame them for trying. That's the way the market works. And that's the importance of getting a good realtor. A realtor that's going to show you the good building, show you some tangible product. It doesn't have to be 10 or 20 years old. If you want shiny and new, you can get something that's 1 or 2 years old without GST. Far better location than what this is on the Cambie Street Bridge. I can tell you too, there's a few of these buildings. The access to these buildings, getting in and out of them, the parkades and things like that, being on the on-ramp and off-ramps of the bridges is horrible. It's horrible. You know, try ordering, Uber Eats or DoorDash. These guys can't find the entrance to get in and park. The accessibility to a lot of these buildings is terrible. And you'll find that out once you move into some of these buildings. There's probably 15 or 20 of these I wouldn't touch with a 10-foot pole. Wouldn't go near them because there's just so much better stuff out there. It's actually at a better price. But that's what makes Vancouver real estate interesting. You got good stuff, you got bad stuff. You got to wade through it. But again, the final thing is, make sure if you're selling a property that's tenanted, hire a pro that knows the Tenancy Act and can give you the pros and cons to getting maximum price. And maximum price is seldom going to come with your tenant attached. Get the tenant out. You're actually doing your tenant a favor. You're going to pay them to get them out. It's a mutual agreement. You both sign it, and you will do far better on the final selling price. I'm Owen Bigland. As always, thanks for watching. I'll see you next week.